The first step of two-stroke swapping your Honda Ruckus is to acquire a two-stroke engine. The one I'm using is from a Bug-Eye Zuma. You can get any of these from a 02 through 2011 Yamaha Zuma. It's a 50cc two-stroke, obviously, and this one's been upgraded a little bit. But just to quickly describe, I have a top Performance Variator Kit and belt, NCY Adjustable Rear Pulley, NCY ball bearing Contra spring sleeve, white Malossi Contra spring, and some high RPM clutch springs, and a stock clutch. Up top I have a 70cc cast iron Malossi bore, and for the pipe I have a Yasuni Z. Altogether, this should be a pretty mild build, and I'm expecting to be able to get around mid-50 mile per hour range with it. Before we swap this into a Ruckus, we actually have to do some preparation. Let's get a closer look. In order to swap this two-stroke Yamaha motor into your Honda Ruckus, there are two things that you have to do on the motor to prepare it. Number one is changing your intake manifold, and item number two is trimming your motor mount. This is the stock Honda motor mount, and what we're going to do, or what I've already done, is I've already trimmed the Yamaha tube to fit in between the Honda Get motor mount. So that's one thing that you need to do. I think on this side I trimmed 7.5 millimeters off of it. So that's really important because it gets really tight in here against the Ruckus frame. So that's why it's important that you cut this off, and then on the other side here, just trim it to fit. And as long as the Honda motor mount can fit over it, then you're going to be in good shape. So that's one thing about the motor mount that you have to do. Again, this is still Yamaha, you're just trimming it so it'll fit and be received by the Honda motor mount. You're going to reuse your 10 millimeter Honda Get motor mount bolt, but clearly this is a 10 millimeter bolt and this is a 12 millimeter tube. So what I did is I went on Amazon and I purchased a 1 millimeter wall thickness stainless steel tube, and that goes in here. So you can use your stock Honda engine mount with your stock Honda bolt with your stock Yamaha engine mount tube, because you have this 1 millimeter thickness tubing to take up the space. The next step is changing your intake manifold. So step number one on this is to clean all around it, and then remove your intake manifold. You can leave your reeds or you can change them out if you want. I'm not going to. I'm going to keep it all stock, or keep my reed stock. The next step is to install this awesome thing. This is from 2TR. You can only get this from Scooter Swap Shop. And what this is going to do is we're going to use this to point the carburetor forward instead of out to the side. And that is the first step in preparing your motor to be bolted into a Honda Ruckus. There is only one thing that you have to cut off of the Ruckus frame to bolt in a Bug-Eye Zuma motor. So we're going to go here, and as we're looking at the Ruckus frame, you can use a hacksaw or a Dremel or whatever your favorite tool is to cut this brace off. It is right here, and there's a little hanger behind it. Cut that off, because this is going to create a conflict, or it's going to hit the case of your Bug-Eye Zuma motor. Also, just to give yourself a little extra room when you're bolting in your motor, I put a hose clamp to keep the motor mount up, because our carburetor is going to be sticking out right here. Okay, let's bolt it together. So there we have it. Yamaha motor mount. Come on, zoom. Yamaha motor mount, Honda motor mount, Honda engine bolt, and in between here is the 10mm wall thickness stainless steel tube. And we can see if we can go around the other side. We are really tight on the shroud, but that's okay. And if we look down the back, it is pretty much centered with the frame. And this is the reason why we had to cut that gusset out, because it is hitting right here. So next up is to throw a shock on it, and then we'll connect the carb. Okay, the shock that I'm using is out of a cheap clone of something. The diameter of the spring is really small because we have this big tire that we're going to fight with. So if you have an aftermarket spring that has a big diameter, it's probably not going to work. So try to find the shortest and skinniest shock that you can. Now that the engine is in, the rear shock is in, we can come back to our intake manifold, find your favorite carburetor. For this setup, I think a 17.5mm Dellorto is going to be fine. So use our choke. And there we have it. A two-stroke swapped Honda Ruckus. It's ready to roll. Sort of.